Hey friends, hope you're doing well. I wanted to talk about Gordon Lightfoot this morning and him passing away. I I read this book. It's a biography called Lightfoot by Nicholas Jennings. I read this a few years ago and I really dug it. Lots of great stories and insights, and I'm going to talk about it here in a bit. But first, I just wanted to ask you guys, what's your favorite Gordon Lightfoot songs? What are the real standouts to you? He's got so many great songs, and when I think of going all the way back to my childhood, if I heard a Gordon Lightfoot song come on the radio, like I always turned it up, and I still do. I was trying to think of what are the real standouts. Maybe you can tell me down below in your opinion. To me, there aren't really very many songs like In the Early Morning Rain. There's a feel that song gives you, even if you take the lyrics out, and the lyrics are great, but like there's a feel that it gives you that not many songs take me to that place. And when I try to think of other songs that take me to that place, I think of like Gentle on My Mind, Wichita Lineman. You know, Jimmy Webb was good at those kind of songs that bring you into this different headspace just by, I guess, chord structure and melody or something. I Was a Highwayman, same sort of thing. But like even Nat King Cole's Nature Boy, his version of Nature Boy, that brings me into that same kind of feel that I get with In the Early Morning Rain. And it's kind of rarefied air. I hope what I'm saying doesn't seem too vague and out there, but I think some of you know what I'm talking about. These are all different songs, but they just really take you somewhere. And I've never heard a recorded version of that I didn't like, of a lot of different artists. But that struck me. But tell me down below what your favorites were. And I was reading lots of tributes going around. I figured I'd share a couple of those. There's no greater reward or award than to be respected by your peers, especially when your peers are musical geniuses. But there's lots of folks said nice things about Gordon Lightfoot. This is Neil Young, posted at his website. Neil says, I just spoke to Gordon a few weeks back and he sounded happy. Although he had canceled some shows and was reorganizing his touring, I was saddened when I learned today of his passing. Gordon was a great Canadian artist, a songwriter without parallel. His melodies and words were an inspiration to all writers who listen to his music, as they will continue to be through the ages. There is a unique and wonderful feeling to Gordon's music. Lightfoot is a Canadian legend. His song just came up today by itself on the Hearst schedule. Peace, Gordon. Love, Neil. His song came up by itself on the Hearst schedule. I don't know what that means, but that was Neil Young. And I haven't heard anything from Bob Dylan, like an official release. Maybe it's out there and you guys can point me towards it after Gordon has passed. But I believe this quote was from Dylan's Chronicles or Biography. I can't remember which one, but this is Bob Dylan. I can't think of any Gordon Lightfoot song I don't like. Every time I hear a song of his, it's like I wish it would last forever. That's pretty high praise right there. Lightfoot became a mentor for a long time. I think he probably still is to this day. That's Bob Dylan. Also, Geddy Lee. I think that's beautiful about music, where it breaks down genres and stuff like that, and you're respected by people across, and you can be friends with people from different areas. I was really happy to see something pop up from Geddy Lee. What's not to love about Geddy Lee? This is one of the first times we met outside a local award show at a club in Toronto. A legendary poet, a songwriting inspiration, a gem of a man. I loved him. He used to bring his daughter, who was a fan, to our shows, and he'd sit with her in the audience, getting blasted with volume for 3 hours. A few months back, he phoned me out of the blue for no other reason than to say he'd just watched one of our concert films and really loved it. Every time I ran into him, the first thing he would ask was how many gigs we'd done that year. He'd then proudly counter with the fact that he'd played even more. Rest in peace, Gord. You are the man, the greatest Canadian. That's Geddy Lee. That's beautiful, man. Gordon Lightfoot sitting at a Rush show with his daughter, enjoying the hell out of it. This is an old quote from John Prine. This is back in 2005 about Gordon Lightfoot. So John Prine says, I always knew Gordon Lightfoot was a really great songwriter, but his stuff even sounds better and better all the time. It's just so really good to me. It's just like that's what should be in a dictionary, you know. Next to a really good contemporary folk song is a Gordon Lightfoot song. That's John Prine in 2005. Did you guys ever see Gordon Lightfoot live? I never did. He came to Nashville. He played the Ryman sometime in the last 10 years, and I didn't get to see that. And I thought that he did another thing where he played with the Nashville Symphony Orchestra sometime in the last 10 years, but I didn't see either of those. I missed out on it. But if you're a Gordon Lightfoot fan, you'll dig this. You know, you click the video, so you probably are a fan. But if you just click this out of curiosity and you're not a fan, I think you would dig this biography just because he crosses paths with so many interesting and amazing people. I mean, so many people. And it's woven all through this. So within the larger story of his life, there's all of these smaller stories of interesting interactions with people. One such interaction, he's talking about hanging out with Harry Belafonte, there's Alan Thicke, there's other stories of that. There's a story of him sitting and having lunch with Jerry Jeff Walker. He talks about hearing Mr. Bojangles for the very first time. There's a story of that, and where Jerry Jeff just brought it by a club and they played it through the PA and he got to hear the recording of it first time. But him and Jerry Jeff Walker were having lunch, and they're trying to talk to each other and concentrate, but they're having a hard time concentrating on the conversation because in the table right next to them is Jack Kerouac sitting there eating. So Gordon Lightfoot. And what restaurant is this is what I want to know. But you know, you walk into a restaurant and there's Gordon Lightfoot and Jerry Jeff Walker, and you go, oh wait, there's Jack Kerouac. But stuff like that I find super interesting. But there's a quote in here. First, I'll show you this picture here. That's Gordon Lightfoot in 1966. I don't know if you can tell. He's standing on the wing of an airplane. I think it's a 707. It says TWA on it, and it says jumping a jet plane, Lightfoot at John F. Kennedy Airport, New York, 1966. Photo by Daniel Kramer. And if that doesn't tell you how different life was back then, you could just get a folk singer to go out and stand on a plane. And look at these boots. You see those boots? How the hell's he not falling down all over himself? I couldn't climb up there in my sneakers, but there's a quote here. It says, writing songs, this is Gordon Lightfoot, writing songs is about finding the time because it's an isolated thing. You need to lock yourself in a room to do it, in one shape or another, whether it's an empty house or hotel room. In those days, I was mostly writing songs about nature and love and the refined natural beauty of living. I agree 100% about trying to find the solitude to write a song. So just to give you an idea of some of the people's past Gordon Lightfoot is crossing here, he talks about running into Marty Robbins and how Gordon Lightfoot used to cover El Paso. And then as time goes on, Marty Robbins starts covering him and doing River of Darkness. It says, adoration for Lightfoot's songs was especially strong in Nashville. The love affair had begun in 1965 with Marty Robbins' hit version of Ribbon of Darkness and spilled over to Waylon Jennings, George Hamilton IV, the Carter family, and others. In April 1969, Lightfoot and his band flew down to Nashville to appear on the Johnny Cash Show. Cash had been hired by ABC to host a TV show after his 2 live prison albums at Folsom Prison and at San Quentin proved so popular. Taped at the Ryman Auditorium, home of the Grand Ole Opry, the show's first guests were Bob Dylan and Joni Mitchell. Lightfoot was the headliner on the second episode. After a day of rehearsals, the taping took place on April 28th. Cash introduced Lightfoot as one of the finest entertainers, a singer-songwriter, just a great talent and a friend of mine who came tripping down from the North Country Fair. Lightfoot performed Ribbon of Darkness, softly before Cash joined him on For Lovin' Me. I had a real good time with Johnny, Lightfoot says. He was a very affable, down-to-earth guy, and there was a lot of easygoing chatter backstage and on the show. While in Nashville, the ever-gregarious Red Shea heard there was a jam session going on in a local hotel room and insisted that he, Haynes, and Lightfoot check it out. Elliot Mazer joined them. Gord's not pushy and would never force his way into a scene like that, says Haynes. But Red was very outgoing, so he pulled us into the hotel room where, get this, Chris Christopherson and Mickey Newberry and others were playing. I can only imagine who the others might be also. Christopherson, a Rhodes Scholar with a master's degree in English literature, was working as a janitor in Nashville's Columbia Records, determined to become a songwriter. Lightfoot was knocked out by a song Christopherson was singing, something he'd just written called Me and Bobby McGee. Elliot turned to me and said, "You'd better record this before someone else does." Lightfoot says his rendition of Christopherson's Me and Bobby McGee would get recorded later that year, almost a full year before Janis Joplin made a version that became her signature song. That may be common knowledge, but I didn't know Lightfoot's version was earlier than Janis Joplin's. I don't know if you guys can tell, but it just started to rain out here in the early morning rain. But to continue on, talk about the people you meet when you're Gordon Lightfoot. It's a Mariposa Folk Festival in 1968 in Toronto. He's talking about Joni Mitchell and Neil Young being there and Bob Dylan. Neither Mitchell nor Young had been scheduled, and their surprise appearances drew massive crowds. Bob Dylan was wandering around the island with his wife Sarah, trying to look inconspicuous in jeans, white shirt, red bandana, and rimless glasses. Dylan watched performances by bluesman Taj Mahal, Booker White, and Roosevelt Sykes. Lightfoot, wearing rose-colored glasses, was there too and caught a set by newcomer John Prine before sauntering off. Man. When he sat down on a picnic table, someone handed him a guitar and Lightfoot began to strum and sing. Soon, several other guitarists joined him, and a crowd of about 150 gathered around. Lightfoot and Dylan later bumped into each other and were instantly surrounded by fans and autograph hounds. Dylan beat a hasty retreat and took a private boat back to the mainland, but not before arranging to meet Lightfoot at his apartment that night. Lightfoot and Dylan had been mutual admirers, covering each other's songs and following each other's career ever since that first meeting over a pool table at Grossman's Woodstock retreat. Yet Lightfoot was nervous at the prospect of Dylan visiting, and getting shown up again at pool was only part of it. Dylan was aloof and inscrutable, a difficult guy to get a handle on, and he had a way with words that Lightfoot found intimidating. Plus, as much as Lightfoot could crank out songs, when he put his nose to the grindstone, there was no keeping up with Dylan. The encounter at Lightfoot's apartment was awkward in the extreme, according to Kathy Smith and confirmed by Bernie Fielder. Bob and Sarah Dylan arrived and plunked themselves down together in Lightfoot's favorite leather chair. Lightfoot asked Dylan if he'd like something to eat. "A cheese sandwich," Dylan replied, which Smith dutifully went off to make. Lightfoot, thinking it should be something more substantial, raced into the kitchen and told Smith to make it a ham and cheese, which Dylan then refused because of his recent adherence to Judaism. The rest of the evening had long periods of silence with a few mumbled exchanges, and Dylan and Lightfoot mostly just eyeballed each other. Dylan later joked on his Theme Time radio hour in 2006 that he and Lightfoot had a fierce musical feud, similar to the intense early 60s battle between Jamaican singers Derek Morgan and Prince Buster. There's a sub-reference for you. Murray Laughlin, who also lived at 50 Alexander Street, moved in the same circles and was often at Lightfoot's parties, and understood better than most the nature of the Dylan and Lightfoot relationship. Dylan was very respectful of what Gord was doing, says McLaughlin. They both had fans that wanted a piece of them and sensed in each other that they faced a different set of circumstances than most people. It's like belonging to an exclusive club. You'd suddenly get a pass to the penthouse. Gord and Dylan were a part of that club. They're both reclusive and eccentric, so to some degree they're kindred spirits, except Gord's life is not a fabrication. He is who he is. Bob Dylan is a complete myth. It's possible that these kindred spirits, one down to earth, the other wrapped in mystery, each wished they could be a little more like the other. But Lightfoot could never really change who he was. It was so inbred in him, he simply couldn't escape it. Maybe he never wanted to. That's an interesting insight. So throughout this book are a lot of different references to Gordon Lightfoot not being a very spontaneous man. Didn't want to improvise things. He wanted to be well rehearsed, know what he's supposed to do and be prepared and do that. And those are good qualities and everything, but sometimes it meant that he missed out on some things. Here's an example of that. Sometimes it seemed doing it his own way had its costs. On November 25th, Robbie Robertson invited Lightfoot to attend the Last Waltz, the band's farewell concert at San Francisco's Winterland Ballroom. Robertson wanted to quit touring, and he was organizing one grand final performance featuring more than a dozen special guests and a concert to be filmed by Martin Scorsese. Lightfoot flew to California with Kathy Coonley, and was looking forward to seeing many of his performing buddies, including Bob Dylan, Ronnie Hawkins, Joni Mitchell, and Neil Young. He also knew promoter Bill Graham from his Fillmore appearances and producer John Simon, who was serving as a musical director for the concert. With Albert Grossman there as well, it was like old home week, a gathering in which Lightfoot certainly belonged. As Robertson later told this author, over the years with the band, we'd run into Gordon every once in a while and always admired him. He was the one we knew more than anybody else from the folk scene, and he wasn't fearful of crossing over the tracks to our side because his songwriting straddled both popular music and the folk tradition. When he arrived at Winterland, that was Robbie Robertson, by the way. When he arrived at Winterland, Lightfoot was expecting nothing more than a special evening with friends. So this is a quote from Gordon Lightfoot. Lightfoot says, "We walk in, Kathy and I, and Robbie comes up to me, and the first thing he says is, 'Gord, do you want to sing?' I said, 'I don't have anything prepared. I don't have my guitar, and I'm supposed to be sitting with Mo and Lenny from Warner's. If I thought I was going to be called upon, I would have gotten ready, because that's the way I am. I need a little bit of notice.' So I declined, and Kathy and I went and sat with my people. Ron Wood was at our table, and everyone had a hell of a lot of fun. Really enjoyed the show. Ronnie Hawkins wore his wife's fur coat on stage. The guy that really blew me away was Van Morrison. Jesus, he really lit the place up. And Dylan played Forever Young. It was a great time." And it says, Lightfoot would have made a perfect addition to the show, but since spontaneity wasn't his strong suit, he never appeared on stage. The Last Waltz went on to become one of the most revered concert movies of all time. You imagine being offered that gig and turning it down on the spot there? That says something about him. But I just wanted to share some of that with you guys. I recommend you pick up a copy of this. There might be used copies on eBay or something. I don't know what it costs new, but it's really entertaining. And I think, like I said, if you've sat this long through this video, you probably are a Gordon Lightfoot fan. But tell me down below what your favorite songs are, and I'll see you down the road. Much love to y'all.